after becoming a millionaire because he got an expensive painting with the help of his magic eyes. And also his best friend's wedding schedule was still a few days away. Now, Rui went to the excavation site and met the leader of the archaeological team, named Professor Meng. It turned out that this woman was a lecturer in the history faculty at the same university as Uncle Day. So this was a coincidence, because Rui used to be a student there in the same faculty. So Professor Meng wanted to test and tell him to guess what they were looking for at the archaeological site. Rui analyzed that the archaeological team was looking for the tomb of an imperial general, but he did not know the name of the general. It turned out that Rui's answer was right, because the archaeological team was indeed looking for the tomb of a general who had contributed to many wars, namely General Qi Yuan. The search for tombs that had not been found by others. The archaeological team hoped to be able to save valuable objects from the previous dynasty that were buried with the tomb. Also, from the results of the analysis of previous discoveries, several coins and bronze equipment had been found around the mine. It is possible that the main entrance to the tomb is not far from the area where they are standing. Because Rui was very observant, Professor Meng finally invited Rui to join the research to find the tomb carried out by the archaeological team. Not long after Meng was called because someone wanted to meet, it turned out to be Officer Fei, who was investigating a case of tomb theft that had previously occurred in this area. When the professor spoke to Fei, Rui was seen at the research site with a team of archaeologists, so that the analysis of the investigation he carried out suspected that Rui was a spy from a gang of robbers who often stole tombs. When he was about to leave, Fei did not realize that he met one of the robbers, so they thought that the police had found out about the plan that would thwart the tomb theft that they were going to do. So the robbers were talking to Boss Meng, who told them to carry out the theft, so that this time it would be successful because the previous job of robbing the eye-shaped jade that was given had failed. This time, Boss Yu promised that the next job would be successful. Back to Professor Meng, who was looking for the location of the tomb using a drone so that they could monitor from above, plus other sophisticated equipment. But the tools they used were still not able to support finding the location of the tomb. Finally, Rui, armed with a photo given via drone, tried to find the location of the tomb himself, which had unknowingly been watched by Officer Fei's assistant. During the journey, Huang Yu informed that he was at the market to attend an auction. Unfortunately, while he was busy on the phone, Huang Yu accidentally hit a display of goods for sale until it broke, so he had to be responsible to the auction owner at that place. Although Huang Yu insisted that the accident was unintentional, witnesses said that he was indeed the perpetrator. Finally, Huang Yu negotiated with the auction owner, who was indeed very cunning. Huang Yu was deceived by saying that it was not an antique, but a cheap modern collection, so that Huang Yu thought he could pay and agreed to pay for it. However, it turned out that the asking price was 2 million yen. So Huang Yu, who agreed, was forced to pay for the damaged goods. In fact, Huang Yu was indeed deceived because the auction owner was Feng's subordinate. Moving on to Rui, who had found an area with different geology. So, with the help of his eyes looking into the ground, it turned out that the tomb was under that location. Rui called Professor Meng to come see his discovery by looking at different soil samples that there was something hidden below. Rui's discovery greatly helped the work of this research because a little information clue obtained would be very valuable. Based on drone photos, estimates of the structure and color of the different soil lead to a house not far from them. Unfortunately, when they met the homeowner, they were not greeted well by someone with a wound on his face. Because actually, that person was one of the groups of tomb robbers who were afraid that their work would be discovered. Because they saw Rui there who considered a spy, the group planned to get rid of the young man. The archaeological team assumed that the homeowner was one of the robbers because there were burns on his face that were still new. The indication was the fire from the old tomb hole that had been covered by fire or cigarettes. From his suspicions, Professor Meng asked that the robbers be arrested before they dismantled the tomb they were looking for. But according to Officer Fei, the police investigation is not only to catch the robbers, but also to reveal the entire network to the boss who financed their dirty work. Fei, who still suspects that Rui is a spy for the tomb, robbers tells him to meet at a restaurant with several questions. That night, these two officers were waiting at the restaurant, waiting for the young man. Unfortunately, when Rui was about to cross the road, Tuba was stopped by a gang of robbers who were going to kidnap him. Fortunately, the two police officers immediately realized there was a commotion in the car that stopped in the middle of the road trying to help him. Rui, who was curious, immediately looked through the black cloth and clearly saw that the perpetrator had the same tattoo that robbed the pawn shop. Because of fear, the robbers fled, making their plan fail. Unknowingly, Rui said that the kidnapper was a shop robber, even though his head was covered with cloth. Fei, who was suspicious, immediately took him to the office to interrogate how Rui could know that the perpetrators were the same group. However, Rui argued that he saw the perpetrators before his head was covered with cloth. Rui was then told to describe the perpetrator's face through identification on a computer that had stored photos of police fugitives. Finally, it was revealed that the perpetrator was Boss Yu, who was indeed a fugitive from the underworld. For a moment, Fei remembered seeing him at the cemetery, so they quickly went to the house where the robbers were hiding, which turned out to be empty. Because the robbers had prepared themselves at the bombing location, it could be seen from the remaining equipment they had used. The robbers would detonate the bomb at the same time as Rui's friend's wedding, so that the sound of the bomb would be disguised by the sound of firecrackers. At the location, they were waiting for the moment and monitoring the situation. They were connected to Boss Mang, and it turned out that Bing Bing was the big boss who funded this activity. The entire police team moved to the previous house, where the entrance to the tomb was inside, and there the robbers had opened the tomb door, along with the firecrackers that were lit at the wedding party. The robbers realized they were surrounded. They immediately rushed into the tomb, and when the police entered, several robbers were caught. Then the professor and his team also came to the location to come down to immediately catch the robbers and save valuable relics. Rui insisted on coming in, and as a condition, his hands would be handcuffed with Dave, so that he would not run away if he was found out to be part of the robbers. The robbers had gone down to search for the location of the main entrance to the cemetery. Slowly, they carefully walked along the corridor, worried if there was a dangerous trap, when Bing Bing heard the conversation of the robbers who were going to kill Rui. Then, Bing Bing was surprised if this young man was there, so he warned Boss Meng not to disturb someone named Rui. After they and the archaeology team went down into the dark and stuffy tomb, until they reached the corridor by seeing the walls full of ancient paintings that still looked very good, because the tomb had never been entered or looted before. Suddenly, Fei heard the sound and movement of the robbers, who immediately chased them. The frightened group of robbers ran quickly. Accidentally stepping on the floor trap in the tomb corridor, so that the door they passed through immediately closed tightly, trapping them inside. They were confused because they lost track of the robbers. Until then, they accidentally stepped on a floor trap that was along the hallway, activating something, so Rui immediately scanned the wall above it to see the movement mechanism and a very complicated arrangement. But what is certain is that he saw a deadly trap that would rain hundreds of spears on them, making them run half crazy. Fortunately, they survived after the trap ran out at the end of the hallway. Not long after the archaeological team stabbed them and explained that the trap mechanism contained a magnetic field. A metal coin could detect the area where the trap was installed. Then the path they took became a dead end because it was blocked by a tightly closed door. Everyone was confused because there was no clue to open it. So Rui activated his golden eye to penetrate the wall hole with many moving mechanisms that moved something. Rui told Faye the button, but there was no reaction. So according to the professor, the activator device that has a pair is usually activated by being pressed together. So they tried to press the button, which turned out to activate the door on the floor, so that Rui and Faye fell trapped in a room. They were confused there was no way out, so Rui shouted loudly, calling the archaeological team above. The professor realized their presence and tried to press the two previous buttons again, which turned out to have no reaction. The situation became more serious when Faye looked dizzy and short of breath. And then it was discovered that Faye had claustrophobia syndrome, which means being afraid of narrow places such as coffins. Rui tried to calm her down so she wouldn't panic too much. But she also panicked when suddenly the statue's mouth released sand rapidly, which could bury them both. Rui, who had not been able to move freely from the beginning, asked for the key to remove his handcuffs. But the key fell into the sand, so that Day, who was not aware, immediately used his gun. The situation became more serious. Before they were buried alive, Rui used his golden eyes to find a way out of the room full of sand. Until then, Rui saw the control lever buried in the sand. Like a cat wanting to play with sand, the tool was finally pulled and opened a door in front of it, as well as a trap door when they fell. The archaeological team went down because the door that had just opened turned out to be the location of the tomb that had been sought all this time. The professor explained that General Qi Yuan was a collector who, according to legend, had magic eyes, so that all the objects here were certainly valuable from before the Tang Dynasty. Until finally, they opened the chest, which clearly contained bones and a large jade, indicating that all the objects here could be national treasures. So all the equipment was prepared to support the archaeological team that would work in this place. The professor thanked Rui for all the help until the tomb was found, while Rui asked Faye to trust him because he was not part of the robbers. On the other hand, the trapped robbers had no other way to open the door, and they planned to use a bomb to blow up the door before they rotted in that place.